thank you. Thank you for being here, a trooper. Yesterday 9 a.m. and then now here.
Thank you for having me. I'm still awake.
Yeah, and I know we have some people in the room who just came to hear you share everything you know about esports and gaming and Lego and Minecraft.
How much time do we have?
Not that much, so we'll skip the Lego and Minecraft, but a very quick introduction. Ralph, probably not a stranger to everyone who's familiar with esports, but I was just kind of chatting with Ralph backstage, and he's been esports since 1997, since you founded SK Gaming.
Well, technically yes and no, right? Because the word esports wasn't invented back then. So we were playing video games against each other without giving it a special name. That's one side of the story. The other is we tried to compete and tried to win tournaments and actually had people watching. Not more than two hands full, but still people were watching.
Esports has changed so much since then, obviously, and you've been at the forefront of that. You guys have been running, organizing events that have more than 10,000, 20,000 people, and what was it? You mentioned that one of the last events that you guys had was 175,000 people.
It's Katowice, yeah.
Katowice, right? So yeah, I'm trying not to pronounce it wrongly. Yes. Yeah, how's it been? Tell us about that journey. What keeps you going? Over 20 years.
Ultimately, it hasn't changed so much. I mean, when we founded the company in 2000, we had kind of two things why. I mean, reason number one was that we were trying to give the next generation of gamers a better life than we had, pretty much like parents give to their
Very
parents.
Important.
And we wanted to build stages and make them actually stars or celebrities rather than having them playing in underground cellars like we had to do it. So that's the reason number one. And the reason number two is we believed, the hypothesis was, this is going to be a spectator sport. People's going to watch. And actually, you know, for the first few years, we were shocked how long it took for them to convert to fans. So we expected, I mean, it was 26 back then, we expected this to happen overnight, right? We're going to show this great content, and then there's going to be first 10,000, then 100,000, and then millions of people watching within the next few years. It took us a little bit longer, unfortunately. But again, the fundamentals haven't changed so much. I mean, what has changed is that back then gaming was still a niche, and now is about to become the largest entertainment media on the planet. So the underlying...
About to, or it is?
Yeah, I haven't found the right numbers yet. I think it's arguable. You could argue that it's already. You could argue that it's next year or in 5 years. Doesn't really make a difference though, right? Because ultimately there's hundreds of millions of people. Actually, the number we use is 2.6 billion people playing video games on a regular basis. That's enough of a target group we have right now. So I don't really care if it's 10% more or less. And out of those, right, around 400 million are esports fans, and that is the target group we're addressing, and that's already bigger than most other sport that's out there.
Bigger than most countries and nations.
Yeah, bigger than almost every country on the planet except two, I think. No, and again, what we're doing now is, I think what's different than from back in the day, I think first, what we've learned is that actually everything we do in esports has a global relevance. So even if we, you know, broadcast the Italian championship, which is very tiny compared, you know, from budget, from overall fan engagement, there's still 50% of the people watching which are outside of that country. And it's actually even, you know, probably even the Italian championships, people from 80 countries will watch. So we learned over time that this is more a global phenomena than a local phenomena, even though we adapted some local formats. We're aware that everything is global we're doing. So what we wanted to achieve and strive for still, is to make ESL the global brand in esports and to run a global operation, which is the best and the worst thing we did, right? The best because it's the right logic to follow. The worst because it's so incredibly hard to manage a global business.
Well, you guys have definitely become a big force in esports globally. And you've been one of those that have been really successful in getting big sponsorships and all that. And I think it's a good time to actually cue video on sponsorships.
Yeah.
Do you have video?
As you get older, life becomes all about following a few simple rules. Dress proper. Get a real job. Spend time with family. Dance to the beat of your own drum. Work hard. Get married. Move to the suburbs. Start a family. Be humble. Time to grow up.
Sponsorships. So you guys have definitely been leading in terms of sponsorships in esports. So Mercedes, Intel, what do you have, like DHL, Gillette, and all that. What's your secret?
So, I mean, first, I still get goosebumps when I see this video. And earlier today, the global sponsorship guy from Unilever talked about passion content. I think what we've learned in esports, what we've been kind of growing up with is everything we do is actually to create content, right? The tournament is a platform, the tournament is a basis, but we've been from day one building this as a content business. So to create amazing content like this together with partners is something that the esports community strives on, right? They've been celebrating this, and everyone involved has been proud that, you know, a brand like Mercedes goes in a little bit with a smile, right? It's not too serious, but to take it really to the next level in the end of the day. I think if you look at traditional sport, there's actually very few global properties. There's very few events or tournaments that really have global scale. A and B, most of these sports have a very, very old audience if you look at the average. So there's actually not so many alternatives to do something like we've done there. And then if you do it authentic and you have some good cases and you have enough data and KPIs to show it's successful, then it's a typical pull effect. So, you know, Mercedes pulled Vodafone and Vodafone pulled DHL. So it's really, and Intel was the nucleus of it, right? Intel is like the Nike or Adidas of esports. They've been really, you know, even co-building that industry together with us and a lot of other people. So it's very logical and systematic if you think about it on the one side. On the other side, it has to be extremely emotional, like we've seen in that video, and needs to tell a story that we're doing good for this community, for these people, for these 400 million fans.
Authentic, you know, being global and all that. I should want to kind of like jump on that global part. And you guys obviously built this amazing brand and all that. We're here in Southeast Asia, and we're maybe besides Singapore, a lot of these are still emerging markets, maybe even Singapore included. And can you give us some insights or color into your strategy around emerging markets?
So yeah, I touched it very briefly. I think we always have a global and a local strategy. Means if you look at this video, at all the global events we're doing, they're run by the global team. They're global content, and they are there to actually help the local teams. Then we have plenty of local teams around the world from Los Angeles to Sydney actually, and operate in markets where we can add value. So the local teams, we really look at markets which are underdeveloped, great opportunities, who could grow faster. We actually don't like to go to countries where there's already established player who do a fantastic job. We don't believe that esports is a winner takes it all market at all. So again, we like to focus on creating value. This was about creating value for the fans. Ultimately, we're following the same logic. If you look at Southeast Asia, it's such an incredible area with, if you put India and China aside, the amount of young people, of people growing up with video games is insane. So we've been trying actually for quite a few years to build a local team which then can execute with local products and create local fandom and start to educate people as well to watch content so they can actually grow to fans of the global properties too. So it's always kind of a sandwich approach we're doing. And on the other side, to help the global content to be more relevant locally. We've been doing, I think, from a global events perspective, we've been doing well in Asia. We have one mega event every year in Sydney that has been successful. That is going into 3 years now, and hopefully we're going to be there forever.
Forever, yes.
Yeah, that's a plan, right? It's always the idea.
Esports forever can be a bit relative.
No, it's
forever.
if we're doing a mega event, I think that's extremely important. We are striving to be the Wimbledon of esports, and that Wimbledon in that specific area, right? So it's not an apple to apple comparison, but we really want to be here in 10 or 15 years, and we know in the first weekend of May, there is IEM Sydney, and that should always be there. So we're looking really to build these properties. For us, it's more than an event. Then we've done Genting, we've done Manila, and a few other, a little bit smaller ones. So we're really looking for the second and third location. We always do one event in China in August that stayed there, and it's going to continue to stay there. But to let's say, finish up that portfolio or bring it to the next level is something we're working on daily, after all. And then if you look at local content, there is a lot we have to improve, and we can improve. We've spent some time together with Nick, who's running our region for us. Right. And there's some exciting stuff coming up I can't reveal right now. But again, it's about us to help the local ecosystems grow faster. And if we can do that, then we're going to try.
Actually, that was going to be my next question. Say Southeast Asia specifically. Mm-hmm. You just mentioned that you've done a great event in Genting, 6,000 people, and then you had events in Manila and all that. I think the number of people here who kind of interested to know what else for Southeast Asia, or maybe you can speak about what are some of the challenges that you guys have been seeing in the region.
So I think we're pretty used to the type of challenges, because after all, we're not an American company, we're a European company. Means, there's lots of countries side by side who are all very similar and very different at the same time, who all have different languages, right, who have different cultures. Maybe the cultural difference is even a little bit more extreme in Southeast Asia, but the general concept I think we're aware of, and that means every of these countries needs to be treated in a very individual way. If you look at anywhere else in the world, I think it's very clear. We think in ecosystem. I'm not trying to use this buzzword too much, but again, it starts with global events, or it can start actually with online competitions, and then go through national championships and kind of Champions League regional competitions. And we're running a regional Counter-Strike league, so Pro League Asia, that's very successful. We're running 3 larger stadium events in that region for the last 2 years. That's both going to continue to happen, and then we'll need to add some national championships to really, fill that ecosystem. So one dimension, and the other dimension, I think, there's a lot of potential in mobile gaming, and really for Southeast Asia to be even leading that market. So we're paying very close attention to that. We're trying to learn how to operate with mobile games, because historically it's been PC first. Everything major, relevant, or successful in esports has always been PC. And mobile still probably needs a couple of years, specifically in terms of viewership, if you count out Honor of Kings a bit, and maybe even Mobile Legends, but on a broader scale to be that. But we want to be at the forefront rather than following the market there. So that is the other big priority. Local content and mobile, I would say, is our number one things we try to bring / learn with the region.
Yeah, you guys have obviously latched onto that trend in mobile gaming here in Southeast Asia. It's interesting to hear you mention about learning to put together or run good experiences or events in mobile gaming. Is it really that different between PC and mobile? I mean,
yes and no. I mean, there's a lot of things that are similar, but ultimately, if you look at our Counter-Strike events, because that's the one we're running for the longest time, we're running events like this since 2000, literally. If you compare what we did back then and what we're doing now, it is obviously a day and night difference. Every single game needs to have a very specific team, a very specific approach on how you broadcast even the in-game content. It's the same that if, let's say, the team that produces a Cricket World Championship gets sent to the US and has to produce a Super Bowl, it's probably going to be a challenge, right? They're probably not really going to know, what to cover, right, which are the good moves, which are the bad moves. Right. So there's always some very in-game specific technical things, content-oriented things. You need to have the right caster talent to make it interesting beyond the core target group. And plenty of more things that still make it different and individual. Plus, mobile games tend to be much shorter in terms of time spent, and not actually playing, but each match, right? The average mobile game is more between 10, 15 minutes per session, or 4 actually to 15 minutes. So a Counter-Strike match historically takes 20 minutes, so it needs different formats there too. It has one other big difference, that you can actually bring a few thousand people into a venue and actually play out the champion over a weekend, which is technically not even possible with PC gaming. So there are some specific things we want to get right, rather than just do a copy and paste and do the same.
That's super interesting and insightful hearing you break it down to what are some of the things. Let's switch gears a little bit. Olympics, IOC, they called for an esports forum. Was it last month? 2 months back in July, and in Lausanne, Switzerland. Both of us happened to be there. And,
yep. We had a good time, right?
Yeah, we had a good time. But what do you think? Tell us.
What did I think? I think it's a good dialogue. I think it's, and I've actually been saying that for quite some time now. So I'll go a little bit back. In 2013, when we did our first stadium event in Katowice, and 2014 we did the second one in Frankfurt in Germany, the conversation changed. The conversation changed specifically with press and media from, hey, is this going to be a sport, to, hey, I see the stadium, I see 10,000 people going crazy. It's exactly the same emotion, it's exactly the same sports spirit. So we'll skip this whole theoretical discussion if this is a sport or not. Can you tell me, will this be Olympic? By them phrasing the question, they gave them the answer themselves. So it's the same answer I'm going to give now. It's a question of when. It's not a question of if. And it's actually not the most important question in the world. So there will be a time when the Olympic needs esports much more than the other way around. I cannot judge really when that time's going to be and how far off that's in the future. And maybe that time passes on without some things happening, then the tables will turn around a little bit. If it's been figured out before, then it might be a great marriage. But one thing is for sure, it certainly should not be, and most likely will not be, a one-to-one copy again, putting esports into the Olympic Games just because there's so many different disciplines, there's some differences. So a model like the Paralympics, which are kind of IOC endorsed, but still a fairly different model, which is not governed by 500 federations across the world. And don't get me wrong, I think federations in esports have a relevant role and, you know, will be extremely important to grow the market. But the extremely hierarchical and very stiff structure of traditional sports federations will not bring value to esports. It will be the other way around.
And I agree, right? The current rigidity and structure of the Olympics and all that will take a while to kind of accommodate all that dynamism in esports.
Exactly. I mean, 1 year ago, 1.5 years ago, there was no battle royale. Now it's the largest genre in the world. If you have a federation structure which needs to have one meeting a year to decide if that should be a relevant game, good luck.
And then if you do it like a Olympic format every 4 years,
exactly.
Try to maintain the same games, it will be challenging.
Exactly. So there needs to be a much more agile approach. But in the end of the day, it's going to be fine. I'm pretty sure.
And in the meantime, you guys are not sitting on your laurels. You're not waiting. You went ahead and took part in the Pyeongchang.
Exactly. So, I mean, factually, around the Olympics, esports is already happening. We had a, what is called demonstration tournament, I don't know. In Pyeongchang, the Asian Games had esports as a demonstration sport, I think, as well, in just 2 weeks ago. So it's kind of happening in reality, and specifically our Pyeongchang event with StarCraft, where I think I told it yesterday as well, but I'm happy to repeat it, a girl won. It's just showing, you know, one of the
cornflakes moment.
Yeah, it's the cornflakes moment. One of these beauties of esports that it's kind of barrier-free and gender agnostic. It's not black and white, but it has a lot of advantages that traditional sports can't give you. And the barrier to entry with games being free nowadays and everyone having at least a mobile device, most of the time a more complex device like a PC as well, is just so freaking inclusive. If anyone ever tried to be a world champion in skiing, right, that is a much more financial investment you have to take. Only very few people in the world can afford. And esports doesn't have that barrier, which makes it a cultural phenomenon for that age group, and which everyone should be proud of and happy about, rather than thinking, oh, boy, this gaming is so complicated.
I have like 500 more questions here. We only have 5 minutes, so I think we have to go just like to the two most important questions that maybe everybody in the room wants to know.
Which are those?
I think one of them is about you guys sold the company, or no, you took a majority investment from a telecom company, MTG, and it was a valuation of 110 million euros. This is in 2015. Yeah. Were you happy about that? What do you really feel about that?
It's a little bit layered question. So first of all, it wasn't a sale, it was a pit stop, we call it, right? So the majority of the management, or actually all of the active management, kept more than 80% of their shares. So I'm still well incentivized. So the price is not really relevant at that point. I think what was relevant though is that we had, because we're a fairly old company even back then, right? It was 15-year-olds. So we had actually quite a complex shareholder structure with some business angels who helped us in the very beginning, some venture capitalists who came on around 2010, and some inactive management who didn't really contribute to the company anymore. So cleaning up that share table and have a leaner structure there was something we absolutely wanted. Point number two, 2014-15, it was really visible that this is going to be a big boys game. That this is, not going to continue to, or it's unlikely that we're going to succeed with our ambitions we're having and have had. As, a privately funded, cash flow oriented company, we will need to invest to grow our global footprint and to grow our product portfolio. So we needed a a certain amount of funding to get into the company that MTG provided. And then we spoke to a lot of large media type companies, some of it from the US, some from Central Europe, actually not so much in Asia back then. And we picked MTG in the end of the day because they're from Sweden, so they're a little bit like Switzerland, right? So none of the big major media companies or media players were really worried about them. And I think that's incredibly important for us because we're game agnostic, we're platform agnostic. You know, we're a platform after all, which runs esport. And you know, to have a Disney on board directly puts you into a certain bucket, and we wanted to avoid that. So we've actually been happy about that. Probably some of the guys who sold back then thought that they could have gotten more money now, but I'm more looking into the future there.
And that was kind of like where my question was going, right? Did you guys felt that you took the money too early? If you waited, would you have more? You know, maybe now Singtel is entering into esports. Maybe if Singtel came in, you know, with all that the money they have, and Singapore is like Switzerland too, right? In the sense that you guys would have got more money.
Yeah. No, I mean, money is relevant, but it's not about money. I mean, we started the company because we believe that esports is going to be the largest sport in the world, and we believe that ESL can be a major or the major player in that market. That is a mission we're following. That is what we're doing. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be fine on that way, money-wise, but it's not about maximizing the short-term ROI. That's not what has driven us for 15 years or 18 years now. We'd be pretty stupid if it was just for chasing the money. And B, let's see what the future brings. So we're good there.
Okay, next question on intellectual property, IP. You guys are arguably like the largest esports company in the world, and obviously, it's in a sense, you're also a third party to all those publishers and all that. You don't own your own IP for the sort of titles and all that. That must be challenging. But how do you guys continue to succeed and grow? And give us some insights.
It's actually, I mean, the simple answer is the biggest disadvantage we're having that we don't own games. The biggest advantage that we're having, we don't own games. Because we're independent of the success of a singular game, we're independent of the time frame of when games are successful and not, and we have a good chance to still be here in 100 years, where it's unlikely that an individual small studio, right, a big publisher can do it as well, but gonna have, you know, esports games, hit after hit after hit. So, I mean, it's a conscious decision, and, you know, with a lot of strategy discussion, if we ever should, you know, invest in distribution platform or games or something, or teams even, and we always said, no, we're Switzerland again, right? We're agnostic. That's bringing some complications, mostly on the short run, but on the long run, it's really about the DNA of the company. So how do we manage to work with game publishers? It's very simple. It's how we filling stadiums, by trying to bring value to that stakeholder, which is not always a given, which is not always super easy, but on the long run, I'm 100% convinced if we do a good job in building esports content for different types of target groups, amateurs, semi-professionals, professionals, and then even the mainstream audience, that game publishers actually want to work with us, because we're helping them to promote their game. And after all, esport, as much as we're hyped about it, it's still, you know, trying to be $1 billion market, and gaming overall is a $120 billion market, and it's going to be a $200 billion market. So for a game publisher, it's probably the smartest strategy, and I'm not trying to, you know, judge it for each and every single one. Different publishers have different opinions there, but it's probably the smartest strategy to absolutely make sure that the game experience is mind-blowingly world-class, best in class. And in esports, they can do some things themselves. Some of them are, you know, very agnostic and do nothing. Some of them are very active and do a lot of things. But there's probably an easier solution than build a 1,000-people esports team. And time has shown that already, right? I mean, first esports, and looking at any traditional sport, they have not built by a single entity. And I don't believe that they can successfully be built. It's so complex with all these local markets, with all these, from grassroots to professional. Any other sports ecosystem is being built by many, many entities. That just seems to be the more successful model. So again, most of the publishers, or some of them do a lot, some of them do a little, some of them do nothing, and that's probably going to stay that way, and some will pivot into another bucket and back forth. But there's, again, on the other side as well, many, many new games coming out and really revolutionizing the market, so that I feel, yeah, as long as we do a good job, we're fine.
We're just about out of time, but how about ending with just another conflicts moment? Did you, besides Pyeongchang, did you have another one that our audience can leave with?
It's a good question. It's actually the video we've watched. That was seeing that the first time in a stadium and seeing the crowd reaction and seeing the fans embrace it. It actually has been sponsorship moments. I'm not sure if I told that story yet, but in Birmingham we had a 10,000 people stadium sold out for Dota 2, which in itself was a complex moment because there hasn't been any major successful tournament so far in the UK. Specifically, London has been tough for viewership, for attendance. And we did a fantastic content marketing activation with an influencer, the Dota guys, so Action Slacks, being the DHL man and bringing players cookies and fun things. And that activation went so far that actually the hall started to chant DHL. They were waiting for the DHL spot and were, really celebrating them, because after all, what did they do? Or actually together with us, they brought value to that community, and that community appreciated that. So again, it's all about creating value for the different stakeholders, which is complex in our world because we have so many, but it's probably the key to success for us, that we can live that complexity.
I wish I could be there when all chanting DHL.
I'll send you a video.
Yeah, I'll definitely watch it. We're out of time. Thank you so much, Ralph, for making the hike all the way here down to Singapore, and really appreciate this conversation, this chat, and I'm sure the audience did too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.